of all, tell me about a typical day teaching in Belize.
It's definitely a lot different than the U.S. Because the teachers move around instead of just staying in one spot like we do in the U.S. So the kids actually have their own room, and then the teachers come to them, and they know each other a lot better, so it's a lot more chaotic. The classroom management is a lot different than I thought it would be coming here. I pictured it being very strict and all the kids at their desk taking notes, but it's definitely not that at all.
Tell us what you're teaching here. What are the classes that you're teaching?
I taught science back at home, so I'm teaching science here. But I'm teaching integrated science 1, integrated science 2, and then I'm observing a biology class. So here, biology is actually in the upper level science classes versus at home where you normally take it your first year. And then integrated science is more like an introduction to a whole bunch of different sciences. So it covers earth science, biology, chemistry, all of it. Huge spectrum of science.
I'm going to open that door and see if it does something for me.
Okay.
Give you a little bit of backlighting.
And there's lights in here too.
No, I think we're best without them,
Okay.
but I think that actually will look pretty good.
It'll also make it cooler in here.
Yeah, let's...
Is that too much?
No, let's... Let me do... There's two shiny things in the background. But I think I can angle...
You can move them if you need to too.
If I do this...
Yeah, they're not shiny now.
That'll take care of it. The only problem is you get a little more noise, but...
Yeah.
No, that's really good.
Unfortunately, they're sawing outside.
It's in the background. So,
Okay.
how does teaching in Belize compare, and how is it? You already talked a little bit about this, but how is it similar and how is it different from teaching in America?
It's really similar in the fact that high schoolers will be high schoolers wherever you go. They like girls, they're dating people, they want to go out at night, and they don't want to be in school for the most part. But it's really different in that most of the kids here are here for a specific reason. They actually know what they want to do with their life, as opposed to probably 75% of the kids back at home have no idea. It's also different because the kids in Belize are a lot more excited, I guess, during the day. They're a lot more lively. They're getting up, moving chairs, moving desks, talking during the middle of class. So it's a lot more difficult for me to feel like I'm in control when I'm teaching here.
Is there anything in particular you wish you had known that you didn't know coming here?
Definitely that the kids are...
In
sorry.
your answer, try to put in your answer
Right.
what I asked you.
Right. One thing that I wish that I had known that I didn't know before I came was that it's not... can I start over again?
Sure.
Sorry. One thing that I wish I had known when I came here was that the kids are a lot more excited during the day, that they move around a lot more. Just because when I came, I expected that very direct instruction, which they have, but it's a lot more wild and crazy when you're teaching.
How do you accommodate diverse learners in a classroom?
It's a lot more difficult. You don't get a sheet of paper that tells you an IEP or learning disabled or anything like that. Most of what you learn about the students is actually from the students themselves. Maybe not about them, but about their friends, sometimes from them. So it's a lot more difficult to learn about the students, especially in the 6 weeks that we've been here, to really get a grasp at what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. As far as the classroom goes, I try and incorporate a lot of different learning styles into my teaching. So that's basically how I incorporate for those learners.
Can you scoot about 6 inches that way? Yeah, perfect, perfect. There we go. Hang on a second. Advise somebody who's thinking about being part of a program like this. What advice would you give someone about coming here?
The biggest thing is flexibility. You need that to be a teacher wherever you are in the world, but especially in a new country, because you're going to have to get used to the culture as well as the different teaching styles, different ways of interacting with people. It took me about a week to understand my students just because they speak different slang than my students do at home. And it's definitely a lot hotter.
In your lesson today, what were you trying to accomplish today, and how do you felt like as you look back on what you were doing today?
Today during the lesson, I was actually comparing how students deal with a project or a lab that they have to do completely on their own. So a lesson that they have to come up with what they want to test and how they want to test it. I did the same lab at home, and then I compared it to the lab here. So that was really the purpose, just to see how they felt and if they were comfortable with doing the lab or not. We talked about rock cycling, so they had a little bit of background knowledge as far as how things can weather, and then they could apply that to the lab today. My results were a lot different in the two countries. In the US, they tested lots of different variables, whereas here, most of the kids decided to test if it weathered faster with hot or cold water.
So were there different prompts, or were the prompts the same in terms of stirring or hot or cold or whatever?
The prompts were exactly the same. The prompt was, I'm going to give you 2 sugar cubes. One you're going to dissolve in room temperature water, and I want you to figure out if you can make the other one dissolve faster, and how can you do it. That was all they were given, and then they were supposed to come up with what they wanted to test, whether it was the pH, changing the acidity level, the temperature, breaking them in little pieces, anything like that.
So what did most of them choose to do?
Here, in Belize, most of the children chose to use hot water and then room temperature water and compare the 2 times. At home, I had kids that used vinegar to use it as an acid. I had them measure the pH. There were also people measuring different temperatures and how it affected. And then people that would measure the number and size of breaking up the sugar cubes to see how fast it dissolved.
Anything else? Any other thoughts, ideas about the whole teaching in Belize process?
Teaching in Belize is a lot different than I expected, but it's also been really rewarding in that it's pushed me out of my comfort zone. 2 months ago, if you had thrown me into this, I would not have been ready. But I feel a lot more prepared to both teach here and at home now.
What do you think you'll take with you as you move forward as a teacher from this experience?
I think the thing that I'll take forward from this experience into my future is basically that I can accomplish lots of things. I can go teach in different environments where I don't feel comfortable at all, and really work with the kids and get to know them.
It's interesting. Let me ask you a question that I don't know if you've been asking anybody, but in terms of how are you accommodating the different technology you have here versus technology at home?
The technology in Belize is very lacking. At home, my classroom had an Interwrite board, so I could write on the board. It was basically a remote control that I could carry around the classroom. It's different as far as science goes in the fact that we have one science lab. You can see behind me, there's only a few materials that we have. In order to do the lab today, I actually brought in a hot plate just so that we could do the lab. So it's a lot different as far as supplies go, materials. I'd never written on a chalkboard until I got here. And just things as simple as making copies. In order for us to do this lab today, they had to handwrite everything down. And then the survey that they took at the end, I copied onto the board or onto a piece of paper. So it's a lot different as far as that aspect goes, because at home I would just go make copies the morning of.
Anything else?
I don't think so.
Great. Well, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.